So if you want to take a break from AI or electricity, here it is. Today I'm going to talk about waste and waste to capacity. I'm going to start this conversation by quoting Oscar Wilde, who said, "Moderation is a fatal thing. Nothing succeeds like excess." I think if you want a broader takeaway, a one-line takeaway from today's 25-minute presentation, that'll be it. But for those of you who wish to continue, I'm going to proceed talking about excess capacity. So excess capacity or slack capacity or wasted capacity, I'm going to use this word interchangeably in today's presentation, is a defining feature in the Chinese economy. If you look at a wide range of like newly emergent industries like EV or battery or solar, the capacity utilization rate is only around 50%, which means that if you stand in front of a factory and look at its production lines, it's only operating for 50% of the time in a given year. So there haven't been much consensus on like why this is the case today. There's been two recent work that basically pointed to duplicated industrial policies across regions and interregional competition. But regardless of like what you think about what drives those overcapacity, one thing is pretty sure people have a consensus on is that it is bad. People criticize those kind of existence of duplicated capacity as being socially wasteful. But today's talk, we're going to focus on the flip side of the story, that if you really think about the welfare implications of the existence of excess capacity, there are a few more items to consider. So first of all, more capacity means more competition, and more competition usually means lower price and more consumer welfare. To the extent that having all those capacity allows China to get an upper hand in trade, it also has huge impacts on geopolitics. And finally, which is our point today, it affects firms' choices on a wide range of decisions in a lot of markets, which we know have been bothered by externalities like innovation, technology adoption, environmental side, and is often believed to be undersupplied and all. So with that in mind, we're going to zoom in onto one very particular industry, which is the waste incineration industry for electricity generation in China. So what is great about this project is not just that, well, by studying waste, I can make a pun in the title, but also, we can really shut down those two channels here because, first of all, there's literally no trade since 2017 when there's a national initiative that basically says we're not going to import any trash internationally. And then the second thing is that all those downstream markets is like completely controlled by the government. The government is the only consumer of trash. And therefore, all those prices are regulated. There's no price competition among all those incinerators within the country. I'll come back to this later. So finally, we can simply zoom in into one single channel here. And then we're going to show you that the extent to which this market experiences overcapacity is just as striking as those industries that are listed here. If you look here, the supply of all those trash, the total number of municipal solid waste collected in the past 2 decades has been increasing by about 3% per year, but the capacity has grown skyrocketed since 2010 or something. The number of firms grew 8-fold, and by 2023, the established capacity is around 250% of the total amount of trash being collected. So the key research question today is that we're going to ask a lot of questions on how those overcapacity drive innovation decisions, drives environmental protection decisions. But the overarching question is that we want you to really think about how we're going to evaluate this question. Is there really excessive entry? And the short answer is no. I'm going to skip the literature, jump right into the data. So we're going to look at 3 outcomes. First, we're going to collect data on the universe of all those plants. And at each chimney level, we do have information on exactly how much pollutant that they emit, daily level information for the past 5 years. And then the second data set stems from the fact that by 2017, there's a government mandate that required the firms to publicize all those contracts with like the universe of public and private contracts with all the firms, so that we can map out their technology decision in terms of like whether they are investing in a large retrofitting effort. And finally, the standard data on patents.
So the collection is all trash or just domestic trash?
Sorry?
So that you said the trash collection, is that just from within China or is that also imported?
Within China, there's no imports since 2017, for a very political reason, because it doesn't look good.
But when you looked at the line, it was, so in 2005, obviously there is imports, but is this just domestic?
But it is just domestic trash, yes. Any other questions?
So you said like the environmental benefits larger, like magnitude larger than that, but like for the companies like environmental benefits like externality, and they don't really care about like those kind of things in it. That is like,
Yeah, precisely, and we're going to ask why.
oh, okay.
All right, great. So today's roadmap here, we're going to have a 5-minute industry overview, and then we're going to show you some reduced form evidence on why government-induced competition leads to pollution mitigation, directed innovation, directed technology adoption. And then we're going to ask why exactly. So we're going to highlight a channel where there's like government-mediated competition in terms of selection on quality, a muted product market price competition, and regulated product market quality competition. And finally, we're going to pull all those strings together to do a back of the envelope calculation of the price and benefit and cost of slack capacity. Great.
Kind of a stupid question, sorry. Are you accounting for like sort of incineration generation of electricity also?
No, not really. So you should always think about the benefit side as a lower bound estimate. Think of it, it could generate a wide range of other benefits in terms of, for example, it's substituting for other forms of waste management, for example, landfills. It's generating labor market responses. During COVID, there's been news reports that a lot of laborers are hired even during lockdowns to build those incinerators. So think of it that way. So a quick industry overview. There are 3 things I wish you to remember. First, this is a highly subsidized industry. If you look at the listed firms, the gross margin is around 52%, which is on par with Apple. The downstream market is really regulated. The firm's profit come from 2 sides. First, the government is going to pay those firms a garbage processing fee per unit of trash that they're burning. And then electricity generation is another form of revenue. They contribute to roughly half of all their firm's income, and those 2 prices are usually just fixed, either provincially or nationally. The second thing is that there has been large-scale retrofitting efforts over the past 5 years. Despite no international trade, as I mentioned, no regulational change since 2015, when the regulation is already really strict, on par with EU standards. And finally, no monitoring technology changes since 2020, when they installed all those CEMS and publicized the data to the public. Finally, which is great for identification purposes, I'm going to show you that the firm entry usually responds more to political incentives than to firm profit optimization. The way it does is that essentially the government is going to decide through a bureaucratic process when, where, or whether they're going to set up a new incinerator. They're not going to negotiate with the firm at this stage. And then they're going to go through a bidding process so that they're going to choose a firm to operate the site. It's usually signed as a contract of BOT, like buy, operate, transfer. And that so that the firm is going to operate the site for 30 years and then transfer the ownership back to the government. If those qualitative discussions not able to convince you, we can run a small balance test, which we basically compare the treated incumbents with the control incumbents, where the treated incumbents are defined as those incinerators that experiences a competitor entry within a small radius in that year. So essentially, we see that as contrary to what a lot of those entry models would predict, as contrary to what a lot of entry models would predict, entry is not selected based on, for example, the capacity utilization of incumbents, the cleanness of incumbents, and some basic characteristics of those incumbents.
Yeah, so I have a question on the background. So what's the reason for the capacity increase for the past few years? Is that due to like government regulation, or it's more like technology improvement?
I would say basically they do have, think of it as the politicians have take some utility from ribbon cutting. Like, those kind of infrastructures are a great way to signal their commitment to the environment process, to the extent that the environment process is like more and more factored in the promotion process, like, you will see that basically each county wants their own incinerator.
Sort of from personal experience, was there bundling of also sort of changes in the supply of trash? Like I live in an area where all of a sudden we started collecting waste and just like distributing them.
So if you look at the city level trends, every city is usually just growing at a constant rate of 3%. There's no, so if you look at the overall trend here, it's quite flat.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like the cities that implement additional entry of incinerators also change incentives for people to sort waste.
Great, so you can look at the row here,
Okay.
where we compute the changes in the waste collection in that city.
Okay.
You'll see that it doesn't change both in the pre-period and the post-period. No questions.
So the incentive of the local politician is that they want to minimize particulate, so they want to minimize like trash being left around. What's there? So you're basically saying that they're subsidizing this activity, right?
Mm-hmm. The national government is subsidizing this activity. The local government want to get rid of all the trash, but they're already getting rid of all the trash. They want to build some public infrastructure of those incineration plants, which is considered like the cleaner way to deal with trash. So
Cleaner in the sense that it produces less particulates, or
the cleaner in the sense that it produces less environmental harm as compared to other waste management facilities like landfills.
okay, but what types of environmental harm? What are the dimensions of environmental harm that
You mean the landfills?
the people who are opening these ponds?
So trash incinerators release particles, NOx. Landfills release various different things like methane leaks. It also contains like underground water.
So the new incinerators are cleaner than the.
Yeah, the new incinerators are cleaner.
Is there any like competition in the sense that like I'm going to, as the governor of the county or whatever, like going to open this incinerator faster than like other green counties?
Well, it could be. It could drive this pattern in terms. So the only thing I want to take away from this table is that like there's basically no selection on firm level observables of their fuel efficiencies or something. All right, let's move on. So with that in mind, we're going to study how incumbents react to competitor entry. The standard setup is basically an event study regression where we exploit those entry events, which is defined as a nearby plant opening within 50-kilometer radius at time period t. So let's start with the stage 0 regression, where instead of looking at all those environmental outcomes, let's just test basic IO 101, which predicts that there will be market stealing after a competitor entry, and there is. And the great thing here is that you also see no pre-trends during those periods, suggesting that at least those firms are not selecting on places that are generating way more trash or are experiencing some kind of capacity concerns. Another thing that people usually worry about is that markets are not really local. To address this, we can show you that there is no placebo effect for competitors that's really far away. There's no effect if the market has not been saturated, and there's no effect for a competitor within the 50-kilometer radius, but across the provincial borders, which is known that there has been no interprovincial trade of trash across jurisdictions.
Sorry, another question. Are they allowed to choose where to source trash from, or is that also regulated?
Partially, yes, and that's exactly the channel I'm going to highlight later in this presentation. So I hope those discussions will give you a little bit more confidence in this empirical strategy. So now we're going to look at those 3 outcomes. The first outcome that I'm going to show is that firms really do invest in retrofit. They do decrease their emission after competitor entry. If you look at those CEMS records, those daily emission records, pollution level goes down across all emissions across all pollutants by around 15% in response to competitor entry. And
So just pause this if you're going to come to it, but of course the damages might, if you're going to then try and turn this into the welfare impacts, the emissions are changing, but it really matters where each incinerator is located in terms of marginal damages from emissions at each location.
that's
You're going to be able to capture that somehow? I mean, if my incinerator's upwind of a big city, then, you know, shifting it to the new competitor site would have very different welfare implications.
I see what you mean. So there is a more complicated version like welfare computation in which we basically pull together, for example, the population around those incinerators as part of the calculation for its
You're post
impact.
2020 here, right?
Yes, post
So
2020.
you've got emissions, but ambient concentrations are also available, pretty granular
Yes.
from the satellites at that point. But I think it's for welfare, it's the ambient concentrations that matter, which surely will be affected by the emissions, but
I see,
it's not
agreed.
all local, and it really matters who's nearby.
Agreed. I will not present evidence today, but that's definitely good advice. Thank you. So moving beyond pollution, you also see that they're more likely to contract with other firms to invest in large-scale environmental investments. The probability of retrofit goes up by about 10 percentage points, which is like 150% more than the baseline rate. And then interestingly, there's only effect on the environment. There's no effect on all other kinds of basically large-scale investments with contracting with other firms. The third evidence is on innovation. Patenting goes up. This is like citation-weighted patenting, goes up by around 10 percentage points, also 150% from baseline probability, and there's no effect for other innovators as well. Same placebo exercise. I'm going to skip. So this is great. It seems that those slack capacity is working. The fact that the government is inducing those excessive entries seems to work. But an important question is to understand, like, why really does it happen? Like, so I guess I have only one page of theory. I'm not going to go very deep into this, but the key thing to highlight here is that the consumers are basically inelastically purchasing all the goods because maps into reality assess that basically all those trash have to be taken away. That's a potential source of inefficiency. You'll see that if there's only price competition, then it doesn't really have to be inefficient in any way. The optimal solution here is that the social planner will still choose a no overcapacity regime. But then if you incorporate the quality competition here, you'll see that the general takeaway is that without quality competition, there's no overcapacity. With quality competition, then the optimal level that the social planner should choose involves some kind of overcapacity. I guess in that sense, that capacity is valuable in the sense that it allows the government to basically ration those production towards the cleaner producers. So that's happening in theory, but is it happening in practice? I'm going to show you two evidences to show you that, well, perhaps there is. So the more direct evidence is that we can run a daily, I think it is a day by plant level regression, which basically says that how polluting you are basically predicts how much slack capacity there will be. And it happens only when there is overcapacity and not without. This is some suggestive evidence that the government is intentionally sourcing those trash towards those cleaner producers, which anecdotally we know that happens. Sorry.
So is the idea you have that the government couldn't see how kind of polluting they would be before they enter, and it can't shut them down, so it like lets lots of firms enter so that it can then learn about which ones are clean and then direct activity towards those? Because presumably you could also just limit so that only really clean firms enter, and then you don't have to duplicate the fixed costs and you still get the cleaner.
That would be one reason. The other reason is something related to vintage capital, that there has already some dirty firms operating here, and then I'm going to allow those new firms to enter so that there's competition.
is this consistent with their kind of policy proclamations? I mean, in some sense, they would want to advertise, presumably intentional. So you're seeing this in the data, or are you also seeing them claiming it's a policy to source from the cleaner?
So, they are
So
not.
if it's intentional, they wouldn't want to hide it, right?
Yes, so they are intentional in the trash sourcing part.
Yeah.
They're not intentional in the overcapacity part.
Sure, but on the trash sourcing part, that's sort of announced as a policy goal, or?
That's not. I think that's probably because, so we do see some news reports. We don't see official documents that's exactly guidelining this. I guess I don't really know why. The Chinese government is doing all those kind of things that I don't know why they're doing. So.
If you think about other sort of pollution, the war on pollution or something, it's very much a sort of a clear policy goal, and progress against those targets is very well kind of documented and well advertised. This would seem to be an area where it would be consistent with incentives to reveal that.
One thing I need to mention is that this story is not really well known in the policy debates. So I guess the general attitude toward the overcapacity thing is that they're really against it. They really want to kill all those overcapacity. And even in the waste generation, electricity waste management industry, that in 2022, I think the government basically says there is already too much capacity and I want to shut those plants down instead of like introducing more entrants to this market. So I feel like a lot of people, when looking at this, ask me if this is like the optimal or the second best solution as compared to other kind of, for example, command and control policies. I feel like in a lot of contexts, optimality is a little bit overrated concept in the sense that basically the government doesn't even know that they're doing something good and they're trying to roll back this process. And I think there is some marginal contribution. There is some value in just showing that this is one of the key channels that they're doing something right, and that's driving 40% of PM reduction over the past 5 years, absent regulations.
Maybe one way to internalize that is like, because these are locally decided decisions, do you see any like bureaucratic gains from this? Like, because then you can say that
See if they
yeah,
predict
they're
remotely,
trying
for
to,
example.
yeah.
Yes, it does. It's a mimic.
Also, what you said maybe suggests that overcapacity is optimal, like in the short run, as we're shifting, if there's like a shift from a less clean to a cleaner way of doing something, whereas in the long term, you wouldn't want the overcapacity. It's just, this is their way of trying to force the less clean ones to shut down by encouraging cleaner ones and then just giving all the business
Yeah,
to
but
them.
to the extent that the technology is upgrading and you can always shut down those older plants, then you should always want to do this.
How long does one of these waste incineration plant remain in business?
30 years.
30 years, right? So in that sense, this may not be overcapacity. It may just be taking account of the fact that 30 years down the line, my population is very different and the amount of waste I have is very different.
The base rate of increase of waste collection capacity is only 3%. Think about 30 years, that will be like 120% larger. We are already at that capacity. So,
but that's true even for wastewater treatment plants, right? Like wastewater treatment plants in India are 50% above capacity than today's needs. But that's how municipal services are designed in some way. As opposed to, let's say manufacturing services, it would be different, but municipal services are designed on those timelines. But sure.
I think one reason that I had in mind why there is overcapacity is that there's like an uneven peak in periods of a waste capacity collection. So think if in the summer people produce generally more trash, then they want to burn it. They want to design it to match that peak capacity. I think I tested in the data, it's really not the case. The unutilization rate of all those plants is around the same over the year. So I guess I really need to think about a reason like why Chinese government as well as Indian government actually want to maintain those kind of 50% shutdown rate of those furnaces, since reburning one furnace to the desired temperature is really expensive.
Follow up on the overcapacity question, because if we think a firm, they last for 30 years, and even in a totally market economy where everything is competitive. There are new firms entry, firm exit. If you force a firm to stay for 30 years and the old firm stay there, but the new firms entry, then in a perfect market economy will still see overcapacity in terms of more firms, new firms entry. So if you compare it with a no subsidy, no government economy, probably it's just like at the beginning there's under capacity, but then later on you don't really call it overcapacity. It's still just match the what happening in a total market economy.
We can talk later about this. It really hinges on very strong assumptions that there is overcapacity even in a market economy. So I guess if you don't have inequality competition here, there has to be no overcapacity, even if the firm has venture capital and it's long lasting. Yeah. Final piece of evidence I'm going to show you today is that we can plug in a triple diff term in this event study regression, which basically says that the gap in the environmental configuration really predicts the treatment effect of how incumbents react to entrants. What we see here is that the Marcus-Thielen effects is much larger if a cleaner plant enters. The environmental abatement effect is much larger if a cleaner plant enters. If you replace the cleaner plant triple diff term with, for example, other gaps in the configurations of those incumbents versus new entrants, you'll see that, for example, delta fuel efficiency, delta age, delta electricity power generation capacity does not really predict Marcus-Thielen. So how many time do I have left?
3 minutes.
Okay, I'm just going to wrap up. So a back of the envelope calculation of whether entry is really excessive. This is a very simple calculation, basically pulling together all those event study regressions, reduced form estimates. Even taking the most conservative off-the-shelf estimates of how pollutants translate into value statistic for 5 years. The benefit is around 25.6 million per year, given the fact that a plant operates for around 30 years in their lifetime. The benefit is around 12.5 times larger than the one-time fixed cost of construction. All right, let's just skip the discussions. Going to conclude with that. Thank you.
You could like say.
It's a kind of story that the government is, so the local government, the central government is providing money. The local governments are competing to grab that money by putting in ever newer. Because you can see a local benefit, right, to having a cleaner environment.
Well, that's a good question. But one thing is that the garbage processing fees is paid by the local government. So if you're going to burn your trash here, you're going to basically pay out of your pocket for those firms. That's enforced against your hypothesis. But yeah, possible since there are huge one-time subsidies for those infrastructure programs.
It's going back to Yufan's question. It's basically like you get under that model that it's like industrial policy, but for waste, right? That you want to encourage the newer plants, and the governments are not incurring the full cost of that because the central government, so you get more entry. So is there some way that you could do a counterfactual for like the world without the government subsidies, or that's the kind of relevant dimension, right? That you get ever cleaner incinerators, like you'd get ever better solar producers or whatever, because the government is shoveling in. But that would be an interesting comparison, because what looks like over supply is actually very good for the environment. You'd have much more PM2.5.
I see.
You could do a counterfactual with and without central subsidies.
Pointing.